I'd like to call the Plan Commission meeting to order on Tuesday, May 27th, 2025 at 5:30 PM. Roll call.
I'm here. Park here.
Idler here.
Berto here.
Kane here. Betsy here. Val here.
Is there a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Bell,
Second.
second. Skip
Idler.
Heidler. Sorry, I'm not used to your name yet, Skip, sorry.
It's okay.
And your voice. All those in favor? Aye. Motion carried. Is there a motion to approve the April 22nd, 2025 meeting minutes as presented, or are there any questions, comments, corrections?
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Bell,
Second.
second by Champeau, all in favor? Aye. Motion carried. Comments, correspondence, and concerns from the public. Is there anybody joining us tonight that would like to address the Plan Commission? Julie, do we have anybody on Zoom?
Nobody has raised their hand.
Okay. Item number 5, public hearing and recommendations. 5A, ordinance number 2025-009, map amendment, former Wilsey property, I-1 to R4 and T1. Julie?
Okay, so the public hearing will open at 5:32. And I'll read the first one. So the first one is to amend the zoning map for the village of Sister Bay for the site known as the former Wiltsey site, a 56-acre site at the end of Autumn Court. The site was temporarily placed in an institutional I-1 zoning district when it was annexed and purchased. Approximately 10 acres will be rezoned to a park and recreation zoning district, and the remainder of the parcel will be rezoned to small lot residence R4. There really isn't too much more to add to that other than this property was purchased. The village had put together a committee on what to do with the future of that property. It was determined that a portion of it should be used for residences. There were some other ideas about it having a park, a trail. At one time, there was discussion about maybe putting the village administration office up there. We did do a housing study which showed a need for more housing. So when the Plan Commission met, they had agreed that that area that could be served by sewer and water would be zoned to small lot residence R4. That portion, which would be the east, approximately 10 acres or so, that could not be served by sewer and water, would be zoned to park and rec.
Is there anybody joining us that would like to speak to this issue? Yes.
Hey, ladies. I'm Allison Werner, 2259 Scandia Road. And I am opposed to the rezoning of the 46 acres of the Wiltsey as R4 because I believe that this is paving the way for an overcrowded development. Sister Bay has been trying to find an answer to the housing shortage, and I applaud the village for that, but I don't think that a viable plan has yet been realized. Changing the zoning to R4 could then lead to the placement of infrastructure, which I believe was in the CIP at $3.6 million. As a taxpayer, I do not want to spend money on a development that could add close to 1,000 residents to our village of approximately 1,100, nearly doubling our size. This number of 1,000 I came up with based on an earlier plan that was circulated for the development. I think this would place a strain on our roads, our beach, and the downtown. Cars from this development would most likely exit on Scandia, Mill, or Maple, all of which are already congested. Also, I think this development would not just serve the residents of Sister Bay and solve our own housing shortage, but we would be attracting people from all over to these homes and apartments and therefore not solving our problem, just increasing our population. When discussing the cost of a single family home, I believe the village was estimating about $280,000 a year or so ago. And I'm not sure if a house can be built for that price, nor do I know if that is affordable for a low or moderate income family. And once in a home, they might go into further debt, paying all the costs that come along with homeownership, including utilities, maintenance, and taxes. So if by law the zoning must be changed, I would recommend that the whole Wiltsey property be placed as parkland until a firm plan is in place.
Thank you, Allison. Anyone else? Okay. Any Plan Commission comments, discussions, considerations?
This is in place because we are trying to make this, we want this basic system with our longer 20-year plan. Why we're doing this rezone, correct? I think we should just state that, that's why we're doing this. But while I also point that this would be one less impediment to doing development out there. There are so many other things that have to happen on that. I understand that concern, Allison. I think there's a lot of chances that we have to say this is what we really want. This doesn't say this is going to happen. It doesn't say we're gonna have 1,000 people living out there. There are so many different checks that times to check in that the village board will have, the plan commission will have. And I think it's important that we, if we are gonna put up that 20-year plan, where we zone our land according to it.
Laura?
Can it be changed back? I agree with Allison. I don't wanna see the population grow that much. And they would come from other places because there's nothing really affordable up here. So if we put it into this zoning, can we change it another time? Or do we have to change it right now?
We have to change it legally right now. It has to have
Because this is
some,
a temporary
correct.
zoning, okay. So is there a possibility of putting it into some sort of zoning that would allow us to change it once we have some sort of housing plan in place? Or do we have to have it zoned this way before we can move forward with that housing plan that we've been talking about?
Julie, do you want to answer that?
Sure. So our land use decisions have to be consistent with the adopted land use plan. And Nate is right. We recently adopted the comprehensive land use plan, and that plan showed that the majority of that property was going to be residential, and then the remainder would be parkland. Now, to be consistent with that comprehensive plan, we could put it in R1, R2, R3, or R4. Because on the comp plan, it just shows it as residential. So we have choices on that. My understanding is the reason why it was R4 is the village years ago had talked about that property being R4, and that's when they created that R4 zoning district that you find in the code. Could you change it at a later date? Yes, as long as it remains consistent with the comprehensive plan.
Is my understanding correct that if it was zoned as park, then anything that's done with it initially could be driven by the park side and not necessarily through the plan commission or housing? Is that a correct understanding or?
Well, certain things in the park still require plan commission approval, like if a site plan review is required or a development agreement. But you're correct. Most things that happen in the park are governed by the Parks Property and Streets Committee.
So similar to the marina and their
Correct.
territory?
Yeah. Mhm.
Patrice?
So I'm on the housing committee and we've been working for a year and a half on trying to come up with some ideas for affordable housing in the village. It's desperately needed. I am for rezoning it to R4. I don't want to see 1,000 more people there. I think we should start small. And provide some type of affordable housing option for our workforce and for young people and for older people, retired people to find a place to live in Sister Bay, because there is no housing in Sister Bay affordable now. And who is your workforce? Where are they gonna live? They're driving from Sturgeon Bay, Algoma, even further. We need to look at the future. I mean, we have all these growing businesses. Where are they gonna live? It's not fair to not provide housing to people that are in the workforce. And even a retired person who wants to retire here or stay here, say they grew up here, they're a local person and they're in a fixed income, they'd have to move out of Sister Bay because they can't afford to live here in their village. I think we should start small, baby steps. We should come up with a plan that meets some of these needs. And we need to rezone this to R4. And take care of our people that live in the village. And they should have priority on obtaining housing out there before we start offering it to people from all other communities. But that is my position on the rezone.
Thank you. Anyone else? Then a motion would be in order. I will make a motion to approve as presented. Motion by Berto,
Second?
second by Champeau. Roll call, Champeau,
Yes.
Harf,
Yes.
Heidler,
Yes.
Berto, yes, Kane.
Yes. Backseat, yes.
Thank you. Bell,
Yes.
okay, motion carried.
Okay, so the second petition tonight is to amend the zoning map for the village of Sister Bay for the site known as the former Loggerquist site, a 40-acre site located at 10596 Woodcrest Road. The site was temporarily placed in a park and recreation P1 zoning district. The west half is to be rezoned to an institutional I1 zoning district, and the east half placed in a park and recreation P1 zoning district. And like the first amendment that we heard tonight, state law requires you, when you annex land, you have to put in a temporary zone, but then within a year's time, you actually do have to rezone that property to a permanent zoning classification. So the recommendation from the committee was divided in half. Half would be institutional, which means government buildings, things of that nature. And then the east half would be park and rec.
So at 5:41, we'll open this public hearing. Is there anyone that would like to speak for or against this rezoning? Anyone on Zoom, Julie?
No, I see no hands raised.
Discussion from the plan commission?
So if we didn't do this, we'd have to change our 1-year plan.
That's correct. In
Okay.
the comprehensive plan, we did show it half park and half institutional.
And again, right,
We'll see what happens, but that may change in the future, like anything could. But right now, that's what our comprehensive plan says, and we should stick with that.
and again, recognizing we can make an adjustment if something else changes down the road.
Yeah, the other thing that we should state too is this, because this is village owned property, like if this was a private citizen and they got rezoned, they would immediately be able to do whatever that zoning permitted them to do. The village owns this property, so even though the zoning is changing, that doesn't necessarily mean anything's gonna happen. The village has to decide for something to happen to it. I think that's just worth stating.
Sure. Anything else?
I'm in support of changing the zoning on the Loggerquist property for parks and institutional for the village of Sister Bay.
Is that a motion, Patrice?
Yes, I'd like to make that motion.
Motion by Champeau, second by Kane. All those in favor respond with an aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carried. That public hearing's closed at 5:43. Next public hearing is ordinance 2025-011 text amendment R4 dimensional standards.
Okay, so this would be to amend chapter 66 zoning of the Village of Sister Bay Municipal Code, section 66.0313, parent 4, to revise the dimensional standards to require larger lots, smaller home sizes, and revise setbacks from the road, pavement, and side lot lines. What this is about is in the R4 zoning district, a number of years ago, the village created the R4 district. And when we actually went to lay it out, to put homes on there, what we found is the lot sizes in the code were actually too small. So as you saw if you looked at the proposed ordinance, it makes the lots a little larger than currently in the code. It does allow for smaller homes because we did find that the minimum home sizes in the code were basically too expensive. They were not affordable. So we did reduce the home sizes. There were some adjustments to the setbacks as well from front yards, side yards, and rear yard. Other than that, there were no other proposed changes to the R4 district.
Okay, we'll open that public hearing at 5:44. Is there anyone joining us that would like to speak for or against this? Yes, Steve.
Got a couple of questions about the.
Name and address, please.
Steve, 0509 Hillcrest Road.
Thank you.
I got some questions about this, because when I've been reading through the proposals and the wordable housing, that was come up with more questions than answers. And a couple of things that bother me is that Julia said that this was supposed to be like depression era housing with close houses and that. And I get that, and I think that's a good thing to do because post World War II and depression housing, there were two problems. One was a shortage of labor, one was a shortage of money. But you also had a shortage of materials because after the war effort took so much of that stuff, they didn't have a lot of materials to do anything. So you had things like concrete driveways that were as narrow as possible rather than 24 feet wide, where you 8 feet wide. You had garages separated from the main wall and things like that. And most of those lots were fairly close spaced because when you do that, the infrastructure cost to serve each individual home is reduced because the distance between service laterals is less. And so you end up with simple a little bit, but you end up with cost savings. And I had forwarded to Nate, I think, 3 different actual lots that were built 1920, 1950, 1980. And you can see the progression of how lots were arranged in that time period. But basically, that shortage and that affordability were 2 of the things that were driving a lot of these depression era, that style of housing. The people just didn't have the money. I grew up in one of those neighborhoods, so I can tell you that a lot of these things that you're trying to do, I think, would work. I'm just not sure just how it's going to work. And for example, you've got a 50-foot maximum or minimum lot size. But one of the questions I had was, if you have that 50-foot minimum lot size and the village is controlling it, let's say a developer comes through and he wants to make that 75-foot wide, do you still have authority or say to go and limit that or make it even less? And if somebody says, well, I can put some really affordable housing in a 40-foot lot, the actually city of Waukesha, a lot of the depression era housing is on 25 and 30-foot lots. They're kind of deep, they're maybe 100 feet or 75 feet deep, but they're very narrow. And could you go and do that if the developer just has, let's say, a 6-lot subdivision he's proposing or 6 units? What happens to those 6 units? But somewhere down the road, let's say even 4 years down the road, when somebody wants to sell that. Because one of the problems I've seen in southeastern Wisconsin is people buy a few lots relatively cheaply, probably better rates than Missouri. And they tear down the houses, they put a starter castle, and they combine the lots with the CSM. And once they do that, the regulations technically apply to the CSM, not the original lot, and then that's how you get these huge houses being built. So I guess I'm not sure if you guys have thought of that or you addressed that either. And another thing that's prevalent in post-World War II housing or even depression housing is corner lots are not bigger than any of the other lots. They're all the same width. And in the depression era, a lot of those lots had alleys behind them because that alley would afforded actually less concrete being used, so you didn't have driveways going through the entire lot. And I don't know that you want to do alleys, but the whole idea of having the wider corner lot seemed a little weird to me. And then I noticed that somewhere in one of these things it's talked about a 30% AMI. I think that means annual median income, that's the idea. And all of the mortgage firms and bank people that did mortgages have always told me on a house, you never want to go more than 27% cost of the mortgage, insurance, excuse me, and all your costs, because the 30% is for all debt. That includes the house, the mortgage, insurance, credit cards, car payments, all that stuff. And what one mortgage banker told me was that as you get to that 30%, and maybe they can make those payments the first few years, all it takes is just one black swan sailing through the economic picture. And let's say the car engine fails, or they got to get a new car, or they have to move or something. And all of a sudden, that can go and throw the whole thing into, well, not chaos, but certainly the whole plan is shot at that point. And as an example, I don't know if you guys remember, there used to be a program called Extreme Home Makeover, where they basically gave, they tore down the house and they built a great big, huge, fantastic house for this challenged family or economically deprived family. And then they moved it in, they did it all in a week, they got the trades going, and all that. So it was really an interesting follow-up to that. And after I think it was 3 years or something, only one person out of the 24 episodes that were filmed still owned the property. And what they couldn't afford the heat, the insurance, cooling bills, the property taxes, whatever you got on that. And they were saying everyone's broke on those annual. Of course, that's either mortgage insurance and all that. But I haven't seen anything like that addressed in here. I'm sure somebody must have thought of it at some point, but I just don't see it. And so I guess I'm wondering, is that addressed or is that?
I don't think that's really our business,
Yeah,
Steve,
it's-
as a
that's-
plan
I don't think it
commission.
ties directly into what you're doing here with the setbacks and stuff. What I'm saying is that lot size and all of that cost will eventually affect that. And that's what I was thinking, that maybe what you wanna do is at least afford the possibility of going with narrower lots.
The homes won't fit. That's why we came up with what we did. The layouts that we looked at, we drew them up on the board, and that's how we created, and the minimum area went from 4,500 to 5,000 because of the layout that we came up with, the house and a shared driveway that would be joined together. We've done all that math, and this is what works. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Anyone else? Discussion from the plan commission.
I think as long as we know that we can put the houses on that lot, that's what we're looking for.
Right.
And you've done the research and, we can build 3-bedroom houses on those small lots. And I think.
And have a garage.
I think that's what we're looking.
I think this is the vision of what we think should be there, and I think that I agree with Steve on some things, I disagree with him on others. I do think that the minimum width should be left small. I think that our minimum floor areas should be maximum floor areas. I think we should probably look at that, and not say this is how big it has to be. Let's not try and dictate that it's gotta be a house with a garage. Somebody might just want a house in this area. And I also, I wonder about a 0 side yard setback. You have agreement like we've got in other districts. I understand this may not be the same as B1. It's a little different scenario, but I also wonder if we want to permit something like that. Because that sort of density is what's going to make this more affordable for people. And if we just do, if we try and make it a little bit better version of what we're seeing on R1 right now, it's not gonna move the needle as far as affordability. My thoughts.
I appreciate Steve's comment. I lived in a post-war house for quite a while with a back alley. And I wondered if alleys were something we could consider, because as Steve mentioned, cost is much less for the infrastructure to get the garages. You've got garages that are off the street, so you don't have to deal with the garage taking up such a high percentage of the structure as it's viewed from the street. How would alleys be dealt with on this? We don't really address it at all. Is it something we're trying to avoid? Or is it an option?
So I can answer that. So we did have an engineer do a preliminary layout. What would the cost be, et cetera? We did one when we had that preliminary layout when we had just completed the housing study. And then I visited with the engineer again when we were doing a grant for the project. And to have a street go by a property and then to have an alley go by and back, it is more money. Because you're looking at not just asphalting a street, but you're looking at asphalting an alleyway as well. So for our
I agree, you could
purposes,
have more asphalt if
yeah,
it is going to be an asphalted surface.
which we would require.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you also have the option there of moving utilities to the back. You have the option of the garages being in the back, as well as, you don't have the garbage cans lined up every Tuesday or Wednesday or whatever day it is for that area.
Yeah.
So in an area that we're already compromising some on the kind of aesthetics, it may be an option to actually make it a nicer area also.
Yeah, the conversation so far were that, you would have these homes closer to the road. So the infrastructure isn't going very far. You're going from the road to the home, which is relatively close to the
Sewer
road.
and water, shorter runs.
Shorter runs. Yep, shorter electrical, everything is shorter. Now, if you had it go from the alley and come forward, that's gonna be a longer
I
run.
misspoke. I was thinking electrical and
Yeah.
those services.
Yeah, so the way it was designed, it would be more cost effective to not have the alley and to have those services coming off the street. So now there could be a different design that gets proposed someday. Maybe somebody can figure out a way to make that more affordable. But in our conversations, it just added to the cost of the project. So.
Anything else? A
I'm-
motion of,
I would say, due to the work that the planning commission has put into this and the research and the homework and everything, that we should approve the, ordinance amending 66 to revise the dimensional standards for the small residence R4 zoning district.
motion by Shampo, second by Harf. All those in favor respond with an,
Is discussion still open?
it can be, yep.
And I think I asked this question before about accessory structures if a garage is not attached. How is that defined in the zone?
So if the garage is not attached to the home, it would be an accessory structure. And in this case, it would have, the standards are on page 15.
Right, and my question at that point became the side yard setback is reduced to 5 feet on an accessory structure, whereas farther away from the lot line on the principal structure. Should that be adjusted to the same setback? So that you don't have somebody's garage, if it were detached, being against your.
Yeah, that's a good question. We, in all of our zoning districts or all of our residential zoning districts, we do allow the accessory structure to be closer to the lot line than the home. I think from a planning perspective, that, I don't know about Sister Ray, but I think traditionally that is done because you want the houses further from the lot line because you have people making noise, so you have that separation. With an accessory structure, most people want to tuck it out of the way so they can enjoy more of their yard. And they are, they're not making noise or disturbing the neighbor. So that's why typically you see accessory structures having less of a setback from the side property line than the principal structure.
Well, the reason I raised the question is when we were talking with the fire department, they were saying that by allowing a reduced setback of 8 feet on either side, 16 feet gives them enough access between structures. But if it's now 8 feet and 5 feet, you're starting to reduce that.
Yeah, I mean, it's, like I said, that's a great point. It's consistent with what we do now, but you're right. I mean, if we're asking the fire department, how much room do we need to get through? And then we allow an accessory structure in there, it causes a problem. Now, we don't allow an accessory structure between the home and the road. So the fire department will always be able to get to the principal structure and then back to an
But it could
accessory.
be adjacent to the house if it was a separate garage structure.
It could if they had room. In this district, they're not gonna
It
have the
would be
room.
tight.
Yeah.
But it would be doable. With the additional yard width on the yards.
Yeah, it would have to be, so if the principal structure was 10 feet from the side yard. And, or I'm sorry, if it was 8 feet. So if the home was 8 feet from a side yard. And you had to have an accessory structure that was 5 feet, that would allow you a 3-foot accessory structure on the side. So that,
Well, no, if the detached garage was the accessory structure, it could be 1 car wide. The house. would
Oh,
be a
I see
little
what
bit
you're saying.
narrower, and you're now able to use up more of the width of the lot, but you're reducing the access between that and the adjacent property.
yeah,
I
if,
think there's a hole here that needs to be plugged.
yeah, I don't see how it's possible, but I think we should look at that, maybe when we lay them out, when we get to that point, we may need, and I think we all agreed, we're trying this and we may have to revisit it to make sure it works. I mean, it works on paper with the house plans that we received and worked with.
But there's always people that are figuring out ways to get around
Yeah,
what's there, and I see this as one of those issues, so that's
it
why I'm
could
raising
be.
it.
I mean, there is the possibility that we can change that tonight. If need be, I would imagine that as we work through this process. And the development that will happen at some point in time. that Plan Commission will be involved in that. And so we would be giving the nod to design and layout at that time. And so I think it also can be addressed at that time if somebody were to propose something like that we didn't think is worthwhile,
Well,
or,
but by having this in the code, anybody that would design it this way, we would have to say it's acceptable.
but I think that all the builders that we talked to, they were all attached. There was no reason it costs more money to have an unattached garage. Or we can change it tonight before, approving it and sending it to the village board, to 8 feet.
I mean, my suggestion would be just making it the same as a principal structure where you're 8 foot and 16 total, which gives you consistency.
What are the wishes of the plan commission?
You can make that. Well, we have a motion on the floor. I was good, yeah.
Discussion.
Just say you can make a motion, but. We could have,
So I'm not hearing any, so maybe we should just take a vote on.
The motion
at
as-
hand. Okay, we'll do roll call. Shampo,
Yes.
Harf,
Yes.
Heidler,
No,
Kane,
Yes.
Bassi.
May I abstain? Is there a no vote option? I don't feel like I've been prepped on this one enough.
If you can abstain.
Yeah.
Okay, Bell,
No.
Berto, yes, motion carried. Okay, item 6A, courtesy review proposed conditional use permit application, non-conforming multiple occupancy development, cottage development expansion, 1088 North Bay Shore Drive, Unit 4. Carl, excuse me, Fauerbach?
before, we begin that one, let's just quickly close that public hearing then,
Oh, sorry.
and then we can have Mr. Fauerbach come forward.
Okay.
So let's
We'll
close
close it
at
at
6:02.
Yep.
So, the staff report on this one is Mr. Fauerbach owns a unit in an older cottage resort. The resort has 4 cottages and is located in an R1 district, so the use is non-conforming. Based on the way the code is written, in order for him to add on to that non-conforming unit in the multiple occupancy development, he needs a conditional use permit. In Sister Bay, we like to meet with people before we actually proceed with that conditional use permit, before we actually run the public hearing in the paper. We like to meet with the owner to see if maybe there's some changes or some concerns that we can work out to help them have a more successful application. So that's why Mr. Fauerbach is here, is to basically discuss or see if there's concerns with what he has proposed, so he can try and address those before this actually goes to public hearing. You do have in the meeting packet, you do have the staff report, some email correspondence, a letter from Mr. Fauerbach, a site plan from him, proposed building plan. You can see he's proposing an addition that would be similar to another unit that was improved out there. And then we do have some letters from the neighbors as well.
Letters from the neighbors saying it's okay,
Correct.
for the record.
Yes, correct.
Is this something that you live in year round or seasonally?
No, this is a cottage that we use basically April through October.
Okay,
And so we winterize. And we're not here in the winters.
okay. So, and have you ever used it as a short-term rental?
No, in fact, this was the last cottage that people were renting short-term. And we chose not to do that. So our condo association was basically not doing that anymore. We still allow it in our association bylaws. But nobody is choosing to do it.
Okay, the
And we
current,
don't have any plans.
the current owners are choosing not to do it, okay?
I would like to add that. All the three other cabins have been modified with additions. You know, that Julie had mentioned, the one adjacent to us that was done in 2012. But the other cabins have been added on to in a small way as well. So to give you an idea, this is 560 some square feet cabin, 2 bedrooms with a bathroom. And so we want to do what the neighbors adjacent to us did, which added another bedroom and opened up the living room a little bit. I have talked to our neighbors to the north and south. And they're perfectly fine, especially the one that we border that lot line. Our existing unit is not in a 10-foot setback, and we would just continue the addition along the same path, and they're fine with that. Don't believe there will be any harm or any negative effects to anybody involved. Don't know about the neighbors across the street. You can't even see our development from across the streets.
So on page 22 of our packet where you have the layout of the addition and all the rooms. And there's a door that leads to 4x6.
That is just a storage. So, because we don't have a garage, right? So.
And you can't access it from in the house. It only has the outside door.
That is correct.
Okay,
That is-
I just thought it was weird, so I just
Yeah,
wanted to
it's,
clarify.
For bikes and, you know, skis for the boat and stuff, building there.
Questions from the plan commission?
So currently your proposal is an addition of roughly 17 feet going to the east.
Correct.
And right now it looks like your shed's maybe 24 feet from
That is
current- the current
common
house.
area shed for all 4 other units, 3 other units. So our property line is 9 feet away from that. Our personal house on the property. So you can see that we would be within our personal owned property where we have control over, but the shed is in a common space.
Yeah, but that puts the proximity of your structure within roughly 6 to 8 feet of that
I
shed.
think it's more like 10 feet away.
We don't have any dimensions drawn on the drawings that were provided. When I took a look at the property, and it looked like that would be significantly close.
I believe it's 9 or 10 feet away.
My concern is just that our codes have minimum distances to structures like that.
Well, and that's the reason that I'm here, because
That's why I'm raising the question,
Yeah.
because
um,
that could be
I
a
have
concern.
letters from the 3 other owners within our condo association. And I have letters from the neighbors to the north and neighbors to the south,
Right, I was going
all accepting our proposed.
what is the plan as far as the trees that are currently in that space? Because there's some very mature cedars that are there.
Yeah, we'd have to
Obviously-
remove,
Look like probably at least 3 of them.
Yeah.
But you also don't have enough room between the proposed structure and the property line for workers to get any equipment in there to do anything. How would that be handled?
Well, that's a good question. We haven't gotten that far. I mean, the neighbors, we're on a good basis with our neighbors. I'm sure they will allow people to go onto the driveway, which is right there.
Well, there's currently a little bit of vegetation there, but that would probably be disruptive if construction crews were
Well,
knocking it all down.
so, yeah, so we have a builder involved, and he's not giving me any concerns about that.
That doesn't mean it shouldn't be a concern. I've seen what builders do. Are you planning to have the plumbing in the addition just seasonal also? Like the rest of the house?
That is our plan. Obviously, we'd have a crawl space under the new addition. All of the electrical, all of the plumbing, everything will be updated within the whole cab,
Okay,
to code.
because currently it's built up off the ground, is that
It's
correct?
up off the ground, yeah. So, and we don't plan on making it to where we can stay there in the winter. It just, you know, be too expensive, and we just need more room for our growing family.
Anything else from the plan commission? I appreciate all the letters from your neighbors. That is helpful. I do not personally have any concerns with your proposal.
I like that you're continuing the roof line and everything as what's already.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear
I
that.
appreciate that you're continuing the roof line and the rest of the structure. In line with what's
The
currently there.
intent is to keep it, you know, kind of in the same theme of the other
Hmm.
cabins that are there. So.
So if we're just getting, if nobody else has any other concerns, then we're giving a nod to move forward.
Right, it sounds like there's no major issues, no major concerns, anything that can't be addressed. So what we'll do is, unless somebody has an objection, what we'll do is we'll schedule this for our next plan commission meeting. So we'll have a public hearing in June on the conditional use permit application. And then the plan commission at that time makes a recommendation to the board on what to do with the application. And then the board would meet in July. So it would take a while to actually get through those approval processes. But it sounds like there's no major concerns, so we'll just keep moving forward with it.
Yeah, and I'm happy, my email and my phone number there, I'm happy to answer this question.
Okay.
I think it'd be great if you had an answer to this question about how the builders are gonna work on this, to ask them and see what their thoughts are.
Sure. Well, we do have room to walk around the backside, so anything that needed to be raised, like we might have to do some trussing, whatever, that can all be done from our parking area with, you know, a lift of some sort. So, I mean, the worst case scenario, you have maybe a couple guys carrying a window around the side of the house to set it in place, or to put the siding in. The foundation can be dug out easy enough from our side and forward from our side, because, you know, it's not that far, it's only 19 feet from one side to the other. So,
I just knowing that it's a constricted space,
Yeah.
just expressing concerns, because I,
live there.
well, and I went through the frustration of trying to keep builders from tearing branches
Yeah.
off trees.
No, that's.
They
a
don't always
concern,
care.
And I have to keep everybody in the association happy as well. We're very aware of that, very cognizant of it, so. Our intent is to do as little damage to the footprint as possible.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you next month. 6B, change of use architectural review Waterfront Museum, 10697 North Bay Shore Drive, Village Boathouse, Sister Bay Historical Society.
Okay, so we did review this last month. There were some questions as to the restroom and whether an elevator would be required, and you can see that those items are addressed in the packet. I also did put together a draft development agreement for consideration. we would need another agreement or contract, if this is approved, we would need another agreement with the Historical Society. But that is forthcoming. Our first step is to get through this, see if we are going to recommend approval of the change of use, and see if we are going to recommend a development agreement and what that development agreement would say.
I'd like
Question,
to make a motion that we approve this, to approve the change of use for the waterfront museum for the Sister Rita Historical Society and Marine Club. It's gonna be a wonderful addition to the village for visitors, residents, and teaching us about history about how important the waterfront in Sister Rita was to the founding of this village.
motion by Champeau,
I'll second.
second by Val, discussion.
Procedural question, what other? This isn't going to, we're not gonna approve this, isn't just gonna happen. What other things have gotta happen for this project to start? 'Cause I think there's probably some questions I have that are beyond the scope of plan commission. I
Right.
just wanna understand where to ask some of those questions.
Sure. So we start with the change of use, which is what we're doing tonight, because they have to make sure we're even going to allow them to move forward with this. Then the next step is between the Marina Committee and the Historic Society. They have to talk about a contract, they have to look at, are there gonna, they have to look at a lease and then items associated with that lease contract, whether it's one document or two. But such things as, will there be rent paid? Who's going to pay the electrical? How long is that lease? What to do for insurance, things of that nature. So that's all forthcoming yet. But the first step is to make sure the board tells them they can move forward. They want to do some fundraising and they can't even start that until they know for sure the village is even going to allow them to convert it, the boathouse. So this is step one. I think you'll see things kind of move a little quicker now that we get this through the board, if the board agrees to support this, because we've already reviewed some draft contracts, so to speak. Some of us have that. We're ready or close to ready to bring to the Marina Committee. So I think it'll move forward after this.
So this will happen and then there'll have to be the agreement that'll come from Marina to the village.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
And then does the final plan come back to this commission?
No, so
We're done at this point.
we're done at this point, yes. So
Where did things end up on the question of state building code requirements? I noticed that in the packet related to restrooms specifically. Has that been addressed?
So the architect is saying, no, they do not have to do anything different to that restroom. No, they do not need the elevator. Now they do need a state plan approval. So they need a permit basically from the state. So if the state tells us something different than what the architect is saying, they're going to have to comply with that. They're going to have to abide by it. If it causes a problem, they're going to have to come back and we're going to have to maybe cancel the project. I don't know. But their architect is assuring us that no, that should not be an issue for them.
So you're addressing my concern in that should be included in the agreement with the Historical Society. So the responsibility for that change ends up with.
Right.
them,
We do,
the state.
in that draft agreement, it does talk about how they are responsible for getting all permits. And I think we even have that in here too. In our development agreement, to make sure it's very clear that doesn't fall on the village.
I missed that if it was in there or if it said codes.
Yeah.
Any other comments? The motion would be in order.
We already have that on this. Yeah.
Oh, we did, oh, phew.
The vote.
I seconded, then I.
That's right, and then I went to discussions. All those in favor respond with an aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. So it's not, the development agreement was kind of lumped in,
Right.
doesn't have its own separate, so I presume that motion was to approve the change of use, not the development agreement.
That's what most.
Okay. So are we addressing the proposed
We-
development agreement?
Right, we need to talk
Okay.
about that to see if there's any changes or not.
Okay, so on page 35. On line 32H, events, if any, may require the authorization of the Marina Committee or the Parks, Property and Streets Committee. Developer is to check with the appropriate oversight committee prior to planning any events. I think the or should be changed to and. I think Parks, Property and Streets and the Marina Committee both have an interest on what events, sizes, times, etc. That they both should be in the loop if something is being planned.
Would that allow overflow usage outside the building
Yes, and
as a
that,
possibility?
yes, and that's why, because once you leave that boathouse property, so the boathouse is under the guidance of the Marina Committee. Right, so if they would overflow onto the south, that's under the jurisdiction of the Parks, Property and Streets Committee, which is why it makes sense to have the Parks, Property and Streets Committee also review
I'm
those.
agreeing,
Yeah.
I'm just asking
Sure.
if that was
Sure.
potentials on it.
And I think through all of the words that are on this development agreement, I think that was the only change that I wanted to see made.
So let's just say they wanna be do something with Marina Fest. We would already consider that an event that's already authorized and they could do something part of that, they wouldn't have to get special authorization for the boathouse to participate in that.
I mean, that would be common sense.
I'm.
I know,
Yeah,
it's not always common.
Yes, I just wanna ask.
So that would be addressed through our zoning code, that they would be able to participate in what is considered a village event or village festival. So they're covered, but if they would want to do something separate, like maybe a special on great ships on the bay or something like that,
Yeah.
that would take
Okay,
special
I just
approval.
wanna make- That's common sense, is always common sense.
Yeah. Do we have a motion on that?
We do not have a motion on the development agreement so far.
We recommend development agreement to go forward as presented.
Amended,
Oh, I meant, yes, I'm sorry.
motion by Bell, was that second from Shampo? All those in favor respond with an aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
Okay, so that will go to the June village board meeting.
Okay. 6C. Change of use site plan review parking fee, office to retail, fee in lieu of parking at 10668 North Bay Shore Drive. Bay Blue, care of Scott and Kathleen Peniston.
Right, so you have seen your packet that we do have a new owner of what was known as the former Cox Building, or the blue building at the corner of Mill and North Bay Shore Drive. I did put a staff report in here explaining what is going on there. We do have Mr. and Mrs. Peniston here to answer any questions or to provide more information. But basically, they are looking at the real estate office is going to be moving out of there, and they would like to use that space for retail. That is a change of use, so it does require approval before the plan commission. That's the first issue we have to address. And then the second issue, of course, is the parking, because there is not enough parking on the property. The staff report talks about what is required by code and also what the Pennisons are proposing.
So we just cleaned up, not that long ago. The fee in lieu of parking to become annually, that's what we had originally thought that it always was. It was not interpreted or necessarily written to be as specific as what we wanted, so we did just change that. They are asking, to not apply by that change. And to do a one-time $6,000 payment. I don't think I can go along with that because now the code reflects exactly what we intended it to be. What I would be willing to do I'm happy that it's going to retail. I think that's a much better use in a downtown district than a real estate office, so I'm pleased with that. So I'd be willing to waive the additional parking and just charge them $1,000 annually for the 2 employees. And it would be $2,000 a year. That's what I'm comfortable with. And I also think, seeing that this is the first time that we're working under the change in the code, is that I think we need to determine where their employees should park. When the tenant of the real estate office was in there, he would park right in front of the building.
On the street.
On the street. I don't think that's acceptable. I'm not saying it has to be far away. I think the marketplace parking lot would be a great place to suggest that. Definitely not allowing the employees to park on Highway 42 for an entire day, 8+ hours. I don't know what the work shifts would be. And there's a possibility, if we wanted to get deep into the weeds on this, that one location could be determined June through Fall Festival, and the off season could be, closer or someplace else, but still not on Highway 42. So those were my thoughts. Any others?
There was an express financial burden for the parking fee. I can't remember that figure. It was less than what you just suggested, right, Denise?
It was more.
Oh,
I think they thought of.
yeah, the
this.
previous amount, that would be a financial burden for the retail.
Well, it was presented, I believe, as a financial burden for the owner of the building, not for the town,
Oh, okay,
which.
So how do we-
Seemed inconsistent.
I'm trying to see how that works with what you suggested, Denise, on the $2,000 a year. Is that?
Because I think in their letter, it states, based on the Village of Sister Bay's occupancy calculation for parking needs, a change in use triggers a requirement for 3 parking spaces. It's our understanding
Yeah.
that 3 additional parking spaces at $1,000 per parking space will be a total cost to us to $3,000 annually. So I'm suggesting
Less.
we pay for 2.
Yeah.
Gets it down to 2,000.
Okay,
So I've got, one question is there a retail tenant that's already lined up for this, or is this just?
Yes.
Okay. And what level of traffic does that tenant expect to have?
It's gonna be a clothing retailer,
Okay.
so again, kind of the Door County feel.
Okay,
Uh,
that gives me a good sense of.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's not something that's gonna have people lined up outside the
No,
door waiting.
No.
So what about the
No,
other?
I don't think so.
What about the other tenant, the Midsummer tenant? They will still be there?
they will
Yeah,
do-
she's had a couple more years.
Okay, so essentially you've got a short-term rental upstairs with the 2 sites behind it for parking, which you kind of have to provide something close for people renting. But then with 2 retail tenants, there's quite a few spots that are required, not just for the one new tenant. How is that?
We, the apothecary, who is currently there, came in under the old code when it was $3,000 one-time fee.
Okay, but
So she is,
is it the owner or is it the tenant responsible for parking fees?
that is up to the owner, I believe.
I think I think it was written that it's the owner, wasn't it, Scott? It's,
And
yeah.
whether the owner chooses
To
to,
pass it.
because to pass it along or not is their prerogative. And I think the previous owners of the building passed it on to the tenant.
Wouldn't that spot stick with the use though? I mean, unless they change it from
Yes.
retail, so wouldn't that one spot that they fee in lieu of parking be there until that changes again?
But isn't this change of use for the whole building, not just for a third of it?
No, it is just for
Just
the
for-
third of it.
What was your question on because I know, so when the plan commission approved, the real estate office, the parking for that, they said that was just for that real estate office, and should he leave at that time, then they would have to comply with the parking.
But I'm saying like the fee in lieu of parking was for the retail, was it not?
For Midsummer?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm
Yeah.
saying unless while that remains retail, that spot, that use in that building has that spot.
Correct.
Is,
Yep.
One of the concerns I have is that we're starting into setting a new precedent. And I get that we're in transition, so that can be difficult. But I think we need to be cautious in starting a new precedent and bending too much. Because the next person coming in somewhere down the road is gonna say, hey, why can't I just get half or a third of the parking reduced? Then
Well, they're also, let me find it before I speak.
You other about this property, as you may have seen over time, it's decayed by the previous owner. So we're taking a lot of effort, she and I, to bring it back to life. And so going back to the financial burden, the two things go on. One is we have a pre-existing relationship with Elizabeth and Sweetly at that one-time $3,000 charge, right? We want to be consistent. We don't want inconsistency, but we also don't want to be financially that we can't take care of this building. That doesn't do any of us any good because of its location. So I guess we're asking for dispensation to help us get over a building that we're trying to bring to life. And hopefully we can get a TV out of the window. And it won't be the thing glaring at you to drive.
Thank you.
Well, we're trying.
Thank you.
We're really trying.
Maybe seeing, we've tried to clean up some of the landscaping and, we're just gonna continue to try and look at those.
So on page 87, Skip, of the zoning code, under traffic and parking regulations, it talks about, adjustments in the B1, 2, and 3, P1 and I1 districts. The minimum number of required parking spaces may be adjusted by the plan commission on a case-by-case basis. The petitioner for such an adjustment shall show to the satisfaction of the plan commission that adequate parking will be provided for customers, clients, visitors, and employees. The following provisions and factors shall be used as a basis to adjust parking requirements. They are not asking per se, and they are not proving that they have enough parking. But we have been, flexible in the downtown area just because parking lots are not necessarily the best and highest use down there. Your downtown area should be the most dense of retail, restaurants, commercial entities. And I thought that there was one other place that we could waive a parking space, Julie.
We can give credits. With this property, they've already used up the credits though.
Okay, all right,
Yeah, I mean, this is a property that essentially doesn't have parking.
okay, right.
Yeah.
And so,
Pretty limited.
Right.
I understand.
and so there's only so much you can do with it. And so we have to be realistic that we want something in there. We want someone to be successful in there. Even if the building was torn down, there's very little that you would be able to, it would probably be a third of the size of the building now if they had to get parking on site. And so it's a little leeway on reutilizing structures that are already down there is within our purview.
I think we also want to encourage retaining older structures for that character of our downtown area and not wanting them to tear down, rebuild, and then have parking in that. I shouldn't say, I mean, we want parking, but I don't think I think we want to preserve that character versus requiring people, hey, tear up part of your building or a portion of it just to get this parking in there.
Parking requirements are one of the biggest hindrances to building reuse, not just all over this country.
Right.
I actually think that I'm for having this use there, but I come back to thinking we need to see some structural change in our parking code, so we're not giving these one-off approvals on here. Something along the lines, this is it's not a destination. People aren't going to say, I'm driving here to go there.
Right.
They're gonna be walking in the area.
Yeah.
And these non-destination uses, I think that we really need to curtail or eliminate parking requirements for them. I'm comfortable with this use, but I'm not comfortable having another time where we're making a one-off change.
Well, and the difficulty is when you don't even have parking for employees, that you,
And the challenge on the employees that we've always had, because we've talked about parking on 42 since I've been on planning commission pretty much. And it's very difficult to say, you can't park on a public highway.
oh, it's not enforceable to try and
It
say, hey, you
isn't.
can't park here or there.
Yeah, I mean, it's.
It is if we're waiving some parking
Well,
and it can be part of an agreement
It can
that
be
we
part of the
have.
agreement, but the enforcement of that is difficult at best. I came from a community that had the same issue and they tried to get all the employees parking 3 blocks away and they still didn't.
Patrice, did you have a
I have a
question?
question. So in comparison, and I know a lot of these businesses are going by the old code. But like, for example, the Wild Tomato has no parking. Do they pay fee in lieu of parking? And the Creamery, they might have parking. in
They
the
have
back.
parking.
Spot,
Spot has parking.
okay, and does Happy Coffee have parking?
Yes.
Yep, so this is like one of the few that doesn't, Wild Tomato, this one. I can't think of another one that might not have any parking. Shop.
Chop
There's
doesn't
no
have enough.
parking. Yeah, so. As having some history in retail with my family, I have a lot of empathy to the small retail person who's trying to make their bills downtown and, they don't know what their bottom line is gonna be, what they're gonna be able to, what their profits are gonna be. It's a mystery. So I think it is a hardship for them to pay that move, the parking fee. And they might be having to put that on to their tenant, which is really gonna be rough for that tenant. So, I don't know, I think we should give them
But,
some leeway.
but if they had not turned the upstairs into an STR,
They would have parking.
they would
Yeah.
have parking. And so I would imagine the STR is the biggest driver
Yeah.
of money
Yeah.
versus the leases. Yes, sir.
The parking lot on Mill, just behind Door Hotel. It's got a nice Door Hotel sign in it. That's city parking, right? Village parking?
Some of it is, yeah.
Okay, and some of it is, because I mean, again, if it helps, we can write things into agreements that require people. No, you can't hold us, but we can hold them.
Their
accountable.
employees can park there.
Yeah.
potentially.
So I think that's potentially a solution. The more important thing I want the planning commission to understand is that we're really trying to do good for the community. We recognize this property is so unique and it has such an opportunity to be cleaned up. I mean, you think about it, when you come down that hill, down 42, what's the first thing you see?
Unfortunately, it's a 3-story condo.
Beyond that, so.
I stare at it every single day and curse.
Well, and we could, right, parking into those lease agreements.
Yeah, I think that's easy. All we want to do is what's best for the community.
And that's where I was suggesting that the employees park. It's not that far away.
No, we agree.
It's not
We agree
blocks.
with you.
I have a question. Lights really bother me and I forgot to turn off the one set of lights. And so before I get a migraine, can I turn off one section? Thank you.
As long as you can still see, really.
Yeah,
I feel able to see.
I'm used to it.
You're used to it.
That's not so bad.
So where are we?
I would say, what is the proposal on the table? We've had so many different discussions.
Well, we have theirs. Okay, which is to pay a one-time $6,000 fee. There's my proposal,
That's what I was asking.
$2,000,
Annual.
annual, pay for 2 spaces annually. And determine where those 2 employees can park. Other than that, I don't have anything else.
You know, we spent a lot of time changing the ordinance to the annual. And I think we ought to stick with that. If you want to reduce it to the 2,000,
I think it's fair and I think it's reasonable.
Would there be a change if for some reason the other current retail tenant changes?
No, not the way
Not
that
as
that
long
was.
as it stays retail. Now, if they wanted to do a deli or some kind of small restaurant, yes. It would all depend on its intensity of use.
That's my concern with the
Yeah.
parking, because I don't think that right now they have what.
I don't know that we would look real fondly for maybe food service to go out of there with a lot more employees and a lot more required. Retail really is the best use of that structure. And just the size of those spaces where you can
Yeah, they're not big. I
Right.
get that.
get away with 1 or 2 employees max on any shift.
Maybe we can break it down. Are we okay with the change of use?
Yes.
Everybody's okay with that, right? So we got that part taken care of. And then the other part is, do we agree parking should be over in Marketplace parking lot?
So we're trying to request the employee parking to be over there.
Does
I
that-
agree with that, but I don't think we should put it in there because I think that it's another unenforceable item that we have.
It's not enforceable.
Yeah, and that, so I don't disagree with the sentiment from it, but if the more things we put in there that aren't enforceable, the less diminish the respect for the. real
What if
sense.
they put it in their lease agreement?
Yeah, that's great, but I don't think that. if
I
we're
mean,
being honest
that's
with ourselves-
not on our
Yeah.
records, then that's their issue to do.
But again, it's not enforceable.
No,
We don't have anybody out there chasing parking, so.
no, we don't. And everybody.
Or we can just say. I want it stated somewhere in our motion that they cannot park and the employees cannot park on Highway 42. If you don't want to tell them where to park,
For the record, we did have a previous retail operation in there before that we did tell them where they had to park. When we had the quilt lady in there.
So what happens to the employee when they come in midday on a Saturday and there's no parking available where we're telling them to park?
well, then we just say not on 42. I mean, they have all of Mill Road.
There's always parking on Mill Road. Just go on.
Oh, no, I'm,
Right, you just have to drive far,
You have to
down
go
far
half a
enough.
block. Just still make.
so are we just really saying not parking on 42?
Yeah. I mean, I'm fine with that as long as we at least say that. Because I thought it was, plus the previous tenant, had a small conversion van. And I always thought it was horrible that the parking spot blocked where the apothecary is. So if you were driving past, you couldn't even,
Couldn't even tell what was there.
you couldn't even tell what was there. So do we have consensus? We won't tell them where to park, but they just can't park in 42. Okay. That's fine.
Good question. So if we are telling them to park in a, public lot, and we're paying for 2 spaces, then what are those 2 spaces used for?
What, say that again?
Where does the money?
We're telling, we're writing into our lease agreement, we're saying, okay, that's public parking, you go park there. But we're also paying what sounds like $1,000 a spot a year.
Mhm.
So then what are those, where are those spots, and
It's a fund right
so
now.
then who uses those?
We haven't, it's creating money to address that as we work through other issues. There is no village public parking lot per se that we have acquired enough, right,
Spaces?
right.
It's offsetting expenses the village is having for parking.
Yeah.
We have very real parking expenses, so it's
Okay,
saying, okay, you don't have a parking space here, it's not reasonable to ask you to build one. So you're asking that parking spot to become a village partner, saying, okay, we'll do that, but we want this number.
Yeah, I guess, as you guys think about it, I continue to have a request to get the commission to consider, because an annual charge. I just did the math, that is a 8% charge to the tenants. Cause I can't carry it. So, if we're gonna get hit with a charge, it's gonna have to be passed along. So I just want you to be mindful of the implications, because there is that pass along thing, and it will happen. And it's an issue, but that we.
Julie?
Well, it's up to the plan commission. I mean,
No, I thought we were doing what we were agreeing.
oh, okay.
So I was just gonna say, so if we agree not on 42, so then what do you want?
So we have the uses, okay. We agree not on 42. And then you have to decide annual fee, how much is it per space? Or for this property? Now, Midsummer, doesn't matter how many employees she gets in there. It was basically that retail space is only gonna have to have one. So with this one, do we want to charge them for 1 stall, 2 stall, annual, one time? What is it?
I think it's gotta be annual, otherwise what do we just change our?
Yeah, we've got to follow what the zoning codes are.
I think we should compromise and charge them for 1 stall every year. That way, we're helping them out and we're going by the code.
But it is not the plan commission's responsibility to deal with commercial enterprises finances.
Right.
Well, that. Something I've said that I think everybody here. Except for Steve Skip has heard is saying, plan commission isn't really supposed to think about finances. It's not something we're supposed to consider. It comes into there, we're human, we see that, but it's also not something that is supposed to enter into our calculations. And that's something that I've heard from every administrator we've had.
Okay, so Patrice is proposing 1 space
1 space.
per year.
The only thing that I'm uncomfortable there is what's the framework we're having for that. I think that we need to look at this, and I think we just need to. At least for retail parking, reconsider what our requirements are across the board. I don't like making one-off just.
I agree.
Uh,
There needs to be consistency.
Yeah, there needs to be,
Or there's
there
not
needs to be a
fairness.
framework, and it has to be something where we're at least going through here versus us going in there and saying, okay, well, we're gonna use our authority to make this a little bit different on this one.
That's why I think if we just do the employees, they are not a destination business,
That's a reproducible.
correct?
I think I agree with you, Denise, because it does have a framework that's following. I'd love to see us change our parking ordinance altogether, but that's beyond the scope of what's gonna happen in a reasonable timeline.
Correct. Is that it?
Well, you still have to figure out what you're charging. So I have
I'm
that
gonna
you're
make-
approving, go ahead.
I'm gonna make the motion that we approve the change of use. That employees may not park on Highway 42. And that we charge for 2 employee parking stalls at $1,000 annually
$1,000 each, $1,000 total.
each.
We say per our, whatever our fees are. It's saying $1,000, but then it's referencing that fee schedule instead of
Sure.
saying we came up with a number.
Sure.
Is there a concern that if that fee schedule changes, now they're gonna be charged a higher fee?
I think if that fee schedule changes. We would have to address. Anybody that, because it is annual, that it would make sense that. We
So-
would charge them less moving forward if we reduce it at some point in time.
But what about increasing it? What if you increase it? Are they locked in at a maximum of $1,000 per employee per year? Like maybe next year, maybe it's changed and we now require $2,000 per stall per year.
On who sets fees for the village, that's not into this.
The board sets the
Commissions.
fees.
Right, and that's what I'm saying with this decision, is this setting it at $1,000?
Following the code of an annual fee, which currently is $1,000.
Okay, so it could change. If the fee schedule changes, this $1,000 that we're talking about is not etched in stone. What we're saying is, or per the adopted fee schedule. That way, if the fee schedule changes, it changes with them.
And then they would have every right to come back and talk to us if there was a change made. That increased it.
Not sure how that works because the code says $1,000 per stall. That pretty much locks it in. Bottom of page 87. Line 39.
Yep.
So they're gonna be grandfathered then at if the code changes, they're grandfathered at that $1,000.
Which that should come out and reference only.
It's not supposed to be in there like
Yep.
that.
It's supposed
Yeah,
to
staff was directed
reference-
to take all the fees out and have it say per the adopted fee schedule.
So yes, they will be locked into 1,000.
At some point, if we reduce that, they could come back and ask to change.
Yeah.
Let's put it that.
Okay,
And
so then we need a
next
second.
zoning code amendment, then we need to. Put that on there and remove it and reference the fee schedule.
Actually, the board last year did instruct staff through Scrivener errors to change all of that. That's one that
Was
was not
missed.
changed. So we can fix that through a Scrivener's error.
Okay.
Okay, so then we would need a second on that.
Motion by Berto, second by Bell. Further discussion? All those in favor respond with an aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you. D, change of use, site plan review, service to retail, 2414 Country Walk Drive, Unit 1, doorstop furniture, care of Terrence Rogers.
I'm going to be repeating myself on this one.
Did you say you'd be recusing yourself too, Patrice? No. Oh, just get, okay. Yeah, I thought you said me too. Okay,
Are they with us tonight?
yes,
Okay.
yep. So I provided as much information as I could in your handbook or in the meeting packet. This is going into the space next to Innovative Printing, same building, but the vacant space that's in there. Previously used by Shout Technologies. One of the difficult things with this use is the code doesn't have any parking rules on this type of use. You know, there's nothing in there that says furniture store needs X amount. So we have to make some reasonable assumptions and try and figure out what is a reasonable amount of parking for this land use. So I have addressed that in here.
So basically it's falling under retail general uses.
Right, which would require 53 stalls, which is a lot for a furniture store. So it's pretty unreasonable.
There
So
might be 53 parking spaces up there. It's a
actually,
huge parking lot. That goes
actually,
around 3 sides of the building.
actually there's per plans, there's supposed to be 55 parking stalls out there. But I mean, the way the code is written, if you consider this general retail, it would be 53 just for the furniture use. And then you still have another half the use of the building. So we know when we were crafting this code, the founders, they didn't anticipate this type of use. So we have to kind of be reasonable and say, how much parking are we going to require on that property? So the two things would be considering the change of use for the retail, and then what is the parking or and do we have any concerns? Usually when we look at these, we would look at land use, landscaping, parking, signage, things of that
Yeah,
nature.
that whole lot is in.
And we did not,
Kenistons thought that the building they bought was in bad shape and this property is much, much worse. I presume the people that were raising their hands, you are leasing, you do not own the building? Okay. I really like with Aurora, you know, as Julie writes in her notes, somehow we need to address that horrible sign, the overgrown weeds, the parking lot. It is horrible. And I'm not quite sure exactly how we do that through this application.
so what we did with the Aurora building was we did approve the application that was before us. You know, Mr. Rogers is not the owner, he's a tenant. So with Aurora, we did approve that. And we told the owners of the Aurora building, look, we approved this, but we will not give you any future approvals on this property until you clean up your parking, put in your landscaping and fix your sign. We also told Aurora they had to address some drainage issues, if I remember correctly. So that's what we had done with the Aurora building. So we had approved, like I said, that first use, but thereafter they had to clean it up. They did clean it up. They went through and they striped it. The parking lot, and they did put in landscaping. They addressed some drainage issues we had out there. And then the sign is, they did remove part of the sign. The other part of the sign is the responsibility of the new owner. But Aurora did do what we asked. And then when we had a new application came in, of course, we were able to approve it. So.
Okay, so staff maintains that a change of use is required. We need to figure out parking. From my understanding, this business had already opened and was operating without approvals from Plan Commission.
Right, Mr. Rogers he thought he could just move in from Shout Technologies to this use, so he did not realize that he needed the site plan review. My understanding is when he was notified that when he found out he needed it, he did apply right away. And there was an issue with one of his signs, and it's my understanding he did take that sign down right away. So he is trying to comply with our requirements.
I have no problem with change of use. I think if we look on page 63, this is a little tangent here, you know, which is the old sign. I think we should have Carla, our compliance officer, send them a letter stating that, that needs to be removed. Because it is not a functioning, sign, and have her deal with that. I. I don't know how many parking spaces are on. Is there a legend on here? So I know which way is north. Okay,
North should be the
page-
top.
On page 62. So it would be the parking lot, seeing that it's on three sides, that faces the green area, which
That'd be
is
the
facing
north,
the Piggly Wiggly.
that'd be the north side.
Okay. I think if that would be striped. And I don't know how many spaces that is, because we have no dimensions. I think that would be more than enough for all businesses in this space. I mean, I used it when it was, the door reminder. And the door reminder always had a lot of traffic. A lot of traffic. Probably the most traffic of any business, I would think, that has been in there. And so whatever that would turn out to be, and I know that's pretty vague and maybe erroneous, but that would be more than enough.
So if you're not looking at anything on the sides of the building, but just that north side, it is one.
Oh, you
two-
have a blueprint.
I do. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. There's supposed to be 19 just on the north side of the building. That incorporates.
And that's
some
directly
parking
in front of the
islands.
building,
Not on the sides.
not on the side.
Yeah, that includes some parking islands that are a parking island that is supposed to be there and a handicap stall. Which is, to be honest with you, I think,
Typically, they have all kinds of overflow parking. That if all 19 were filled, that others would be able to utilize. Even though they're not striped, or they are striped, but it's really faint. So 19 spaces.
I can't imagine that use would require 19 spaces, though.
I guess Julie's recommendation here is 16 plus employees for one employee, so it would be 17 spaces. And that still seems much better to do with that. I think it's important that we set a number.
Right.
And I think if we set it, at just say 17 spaces. And if they strike more than that, okay. But that would be what I would think.
I would say the 19 according to the plan, because that's what's drawn.
19 on that side, strike them.
And then, a separate directive to staff to send a letter to the owners of the business stating all this needs to be addressed,
The owner of the property.
the owner of the property.
So the owner of the property that in the future, we will not be approving anything unless they clean up the parking lot, put in the landscaping. Okay.
But unfortunately, I think we have to put the striping in the parking lot on the approval of this, that unfortunately the tenant will have to tell the owner of the property, this is what the plan commission required. Patrice?
So
will this be repaved before they do the striping? Cause it's a nightmare over there.
I know it's a night, I doubt it's going to be repaved. That's a
Oh.
huge amount of asphalt.
I mean, even if they just repave the front, just the front. We can't require that.
So
I mean, it's the eyesore. of
I know.
Saturday.
I know it is. I know. And I don't know if there's still junk on
Because
the
it's boats
back
and-
side of the
and
building.
Trucks and.
The side parking lot's got a lot of potholes in it, but they'd be using the north side of it, so.
Right.
Okay, so far we're looking at approving this change of use, provided that front, the north side is striped. And then to send a
The
letter
19 spaces.
with 19 spaces, and then to send a letter to the owner explaining to them, we will give no future approvals on this property until they have repaved, striped, and landscaped the parking lot.
And possibly remove the sign if Carla's enforcement letter is not complied with.
And is landscaping included that, did I miss that?
Yes, landscaping was included. Aside from that, I do have a directive to make sure Carla sends an enforcement letter so the sign is removed. And then to make sure there is no junk out there in
Yes, sir.
violation of the code.
You wanna mention the sign you're talking about? That sign is, I didn't put that sign in.
Right.
We know.
I asked
Yeah.
permission from Steve to put my sign in that frame.
Is it Steve Sauter that owns the building?
Yeah.
Yes. Steve.
Yeah, he owns that. But what I did was, I don't know if anybody's driven by it, I refurbished that sign, it's painted, it looks pretty good. And I was just gonna.
Oh, you did?
Yeah,
Oh. Cause we have a really ugly picture of that sign in our packet.
that's before I had it painted and taken care of.
Okay.
I did that because it's the reference point I got the size. When I came for my sign print.
Okay.
Since you see that picture, that sign was 100% good.
Okay, you have Carla's not sending a letter.
Carla did send a letter on the sign. Well, Carla did send a letter.
Sign, I never put a sign in that frame. I only had a small sign, that's. But I had signs that would go inside that frame
Okay.
that are professionally done, you know. And I took that picture to show where those signs would go with my application for
Okay.
the sign.
Okay. Does not look like that anymore.
Okay.
Okay. Any other? Comments? Changes?
There could be any issue with trucks delivering furniture.
I think they have
I'm-
tons of space to
So no problem.
deal with that. I don't, personally, I don't foresee that happening, being a problem. With all the conditions that. Or with everything that we discussed. Motion by Kane. There a second?
Second.
Second by Bell. Further discussion?
Just a note, this is just one, we're not gonna require a development agreement on this, are we? That's not, I mean, treat it the same way we did the Aurora building.
Yep.
Okay.
Did I say all those in favor?
No.
Respond with an aye. Aye. Opposed, carried. Thank you.
That's 45 spaces.
What building? 55? 45. Oh, the plan shows 55.
Okay, 6E, development agreement amendment completion deadline and driveway location 10623 and 10627 Sister Bluff Drive. Coming of age in Sister Bay LLC. So we have met with coming of age quite often. Not too much lately. Um. I have. Because of the changes that are being requested. I feel that a new development agreement, should be entered into. I don't feel comfortable extending this. And I don't know how on page 67, where it shows the two different site plan images, on how we can go from all of that blue area down to this little bit of blue area without a drainage plan, the elevations, something from an engineer. I personally cannot say that that's okay when this is what we approved before and now it's a third or a quarter of the size.
So this was about a year and a half ago, the last time we really looked at this, and looked at the one driveway versus two driveway, and I remember quite a bit of discussion happening there. We really preferred that one driveway because of the garage doors, if I remember correctly, and like what the frontal view would have been looking at there, so. This is, you're going to look, the driveway's gonna open up and you're not gonna look at building. You're gonna look at the space between the buildings. So this reverts back to having us look square on at these buildings, and I think we had some really good reasons for not wanting that,
Right,
and I don't think those reasons have changed,
correct.
for me anyway.
Right. And looking at the site plan image also, I don't know, there is a 30-foot paved area between the front of the garage that's asphalt, or an apron and asphalt, 30 feet. How can you not turn a vehicle around in 30 feet? Boggles my mind. That would be one of the reasons why, that's stated in the letter. I just think there's too many changes.
Can I speak to the commission on these items?
Absolutely.
Well, hello again. So first and foremost, in the letter, the delay request is simply the response to the current environment and pricing and tariffs, many things that make building a little questionable at the moment. It's likely to be next year. We're asking through 27 to give another year of leeway should be needed for that reason. Regarding the driveways, the image on the left is how it was approved. In regards to your question, Denise, about all the blue, effectively those that have to be either shallow, but they are longer retention basins for water to keep going. As I say in the letter, that means that all the trees for anyone that has been by it, I hope you like what you see. We're very proud of the building. But all those trees would need to come down to satisfy the plan as approved. We like the trees. We really don't want them to come down. So I think that hopefully there's a shared belief there that we can find a solution that might require that, number one. Your direct questions, how does it make sense? Shallower, deeper, with more swales that lead into it to accommodate that same water is a short answer. Number two, Nate, you're mentioning the reasons for wanting to or not look at a garage. I would beg anyone that has been by it to say, looking at it, that you would look any differently or negatively on the development we've had by a narrower driveway going right toward the garages, rather than one in the middle where you're looking at a propane tank right now. And quite frankly, while we'll be screened when the other building is complete to some degree, it still is looking at a propane tank first thing at a front, what we think is a very nice, aesthetically pleasing structure. You know, most driveways go up to a garage, and that's what we're asking for, is the same consideration, because that red line that I show on the left, guys, it is wonky pulling into that garage right now. It is not convenient, it is not nice. We were up here, of course, all this past weekend, had a very nice weekend. We had 8 cars at PAX at one point. It is a cluster to pull in and out where people are parking and turning movements. It is awful. I beg anyone to come try it if you think I'm crazy or don't believe it. Really, it just simply does not work well. So in a district where 2 driveways that are by code allowed, a lot of probably just something where that everyone's homed up, where it's driveway pulls up here garage. What happened with that same donuts? simply would work so much better.
Bill, since the previous development agreement, what has changed in the codes that a new development agreement would impact? Is propane tank one of those things? Because I know the codes.
No, they
require-
have to be screened no matter what.
I know that they request being buried unless you have to blast.
Right, it's buried or screened, that hasn't changed, that's still the same. For this property, offhand, I can't think of anything that would have changed in the code that would affect it.
So they're not gonna be impacted by a new development agreement on heights or setbacks or anything else?
No,
Okay.
no.
I wish that we had full dimensions on the drawings provided. Currently, right now, are you the owner or developer? So where the driveways come out of the garage, how far does that stone go right now?
The depth off the garage,
From the garage door, how far east does the stone go currently?
approximately, if I compare it to what's been on our plan here, we have it 30 feet to a bit less than that, but not much.
Okay, and it looks like there's a significant area that's already been cleared beyond the stone where it was going to be the retention pond. Is that correct?
The only area that's been cleared beyond that stone is where our driveway is, that was approved by the previous plan.
So the clearing is only to 30 feet.
Otherwise, yes.
And you see you're gonna bring somebody else in to clear further on the site?
Well, if we were
For
to
retention
adhere
ponds.
to the engineered plan, the way that it currently is, every tree you see in front of the property would come down, would allow for the stormwater as appropriate.
Well, and there would be a significant amount of trees coming down, going back to 2 driveways instead of the 1 because the one's already cleared.
But that one would be filled, that one would be used for the pond that would otherwise be required, which would be screened trees that we have to put in, and the driveway replacing would be narrower. So when you see in the image on the right, I know it says there 28 feet, would not be 28 feet, so maybe 15. So if you look at that second image that I show on there, the photo that shows the red lines, that's approximately a 15-foot line.
Correct, right through that large tree.
When you're only losing 2 of them versus 12. I remember very distinctly in our discussions the past 2 years, it's been 2 years. Like, I think we all really like the trees. We do. And so we really don't want to lose these when you're there right now. Followed up at the meeting, of course, with moving the trees are there, they're great. We'll ones that will fill it, so you really don't want to lose these. So the mutual benefit can be a driveway that functions much better as an aspect being there. And we keep the vast majority of the trees that are there. I would hope you all will see that as a thing.
What's your first name?
Garrett,
Garrett?
Yeah.
Hi, I have a question. Can't you keep the trees or most of the trees with the one driveway?
the one that I have right now is for code, but based on the final engineered site plan, those blue swaths you see there are to be
Yeah.
retention basins.
And they
So-
can't be made smaller or put somewhere else in the
But
property?
those trees are very linear. So what I found is Delaware or where trees have to go. If that plan is to be followed.
I think that same, showing a plan that shows 28 feet, and you're saying 15 feet, that's obviously a huge difference there. 15 feet.
Forgive my
What driveway-
lack of technological prowess to a few plans on the fly, guys, and I'm not that background too. But I think what the beauty here is that we would make the width those two new as an engineer. As an example, your average parking stall is 9 by 18, 9 feet wide. Your average travel lane on the street is 1. We go down to 12. I have no problem doing this narrow, it's absolutely fine.
Well, if you did 12, then you'd do the same amount of, same width of driveway exposed to the road, the existing one's 24.
But this was wonky, it's all back.
I'm saying, like, if you took 24 and you split it up to 2, you get 2 12-foot driveways.
Correct.
Then if you can live with that's palatable to me because you're not talking about any more width of driveway on the road. looking at 212 for sheet one.
Correct. I'm sorry.
That's where my logic is going.
Correct.
But, and like I say, as it's shown here, and I understand that you had looked this up, but. What do you see a lot different?
Be amazing, but very limiting.
Garrett, maybe you can talk a little bit about, so the drainage areas, the areas that are supposed to collect the rain. The landscaping plan that was approved, showed that my understanding is most of the trees were gonna come out of there anyway, but that you were gonna plant a bunch of shrubs and everything in there. And it talks about the variety, and I'm thinking they were to help with that drainage in there. Could you maybe talk about how it would change that landscape plan?
There are some plants that are designed going with pressure basins that do retain water or act for that reason. The trees that we would then add around it, around the perimeter or such, would be more evergreen in nature to eventually grow and screen. But the best of both worlds, I think, is we prefer leaving the mature trees that are there in place. And then where you see on that bottom, or the image on the right, excuse me, where the smaller pond, we create a deeper pond that has a more gradual slope coming in the buildings towards the drainage. And put some of those plantings there, but keeping the mature trees elsewhere.
Okay, so it would change the landscape plan too, basically. Correct?
Not necessarily the type or nature, but quantity and positioning, sure, absolutely.
Okay.
So the current utility box that is there is on the easement that is outside of your drawn property line, between the property line and the edge of the road.
The transformer box?
Yeah.
Correct.
Is that on the property line or is it centered?
I don't know if they're compared to a stake or a survey stake is, but it's very close to the road because I just pushed trash carts out there, which by the way, was trash is supposed to be today.
No, it's tomorrow because of holiday.
Okay. They just moved mother is right in front of you. And it's the transformer is very close to the edge of the shoulder.
Julie, I think I am in agreement with you on a new development agreement, and with that, I would like to see actual drawings again with all the dimensions on them. That would include what would be coming down.
Yeah.
I'm not in agreement with what I'm hearing.
And-
I took time to go by there and I'm not in agreement with what I'm hearing.
And without elevations, is that the only place that the ponds can be? Is that, the way the water is traveling? Is that why it's located there? Because one of the other ideas I had also was that if the second building hasn't been built yet, it can be pushed back farther. They don't have to both be equal. We have plenty of room from the back of the patio to the rear setback line, which is on here. And that would give more space and actually might look a little better. Not having those.
We're trying to take the trees.
Yeah. They gotta trust it on that.
Oh,
I
yeah,
agree.
now I do remember the aerial from
Yeah.
back then.
I think that we need a new development agreement. I think we need more information to agree to this. I guess I would say from my perspective, doing 2 driveways, my initial reaction is, we've already gone over this. Well, what's in here and what I'm hearing is a little different, and I can understand what you're talking about, going to 2 driveways. It really is gonna impact us trees, but we don't have enough information of what's presented. And I mean, I appreciate you're trying to give us all the answers here, but we need to see the information in front of us. And I also do think it should be a new development.
I am trying to give the answers yes, but I guess, the process of doing that, which we can be fine doing if that's the old state today, but I'd like to know the sense the committee here say, we don't want to update a fully engineered plan. And I get some sense of if we do that and if we can show certain things that, yes, the committee can be comfortable with A, B, and C, which is.
I can't say that until I see it, Garrett. I can't kind of give a pre-approval.
Let me make this simple if I may. We like mature trees. is saving as many of the church trees as possible shareable? If that answer is yes, then I feel confident saying, okay, let's show that our water can work, and that we can make this our work. Because we'd like to do that, we'd like to know that the idea of having.
But didn't we know all that the first time around?
Right now, we're
That's why we
talking
proposed
about,
it the way we did.
we're talking about 3 trees.
He did like that.
Pardon, Skip?
We're literally talking about 3 trees right now. Here's what the site looks like.
If you took,
And that's why I question the utility box location and that, the adjacent site. Sure, looks like that. So I need a site plan with all dimensions on it to truly make any decisions.
well, and if there were 8 cars this last weekend and there were challenges getting in and out, is it because of there was only half of, because there's only 1 unit built and not all the concrete or asphalt or gravel is there yet, so that made it more difficult?
Situation comes, we have one driver throw the way we have it, we have all cars going this way, so they stop, they park in front where people are, even if they're not coming that far, you're blocking people from getting out. That's someone on the far end, you're backing out. 50, 70, 80 people turn around back up, driving very, start the night. I would challenge you at any one time, please don't take this with any malice or anything, but please, when you go home to your homes tonight, imagine not pulling straight in to your own garages or having to turn by and then make a hook. It is just not.
I do too, because the garage enters on the side, not the front.
Yeah. Okay. Julie, you will,
We don't
talk
have,
to Garrett tomorrow, go over, what it is that we need. We want a new development agreement and a new presentation.
if that's, yeah, what's
That's what
decided.
I'm hearing.
Do we have a motion?
Do you want a motion?
Sure.
What is the motion gonna say? That we wanna refer?
That we would not extend the current, development agreement and have a new one written with a new site plan.
Right now.
Motion by Bell,
Second.
second by Heidler. Any further discussion? All those in favor respond with an aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. Okay, we'll see you again, Garrett.
Is it, you missed me for.
Yes, yes.
You know, smile out Denise, there you go.
Sorry, it's first time with that.
Okay. 6F, Development Agreement Amendment Parking Deadline, 10553 Country Walk Drive, Porch Brothers LL.
So Zaza's Pizzeria is one that came to us last spring, and we normally we give 2 years to do a development agreement, but they were in a hurry to get it open. So we had told them that the area had to be asphalted and striped by May 31st of 2025. As you can see in the staff report, Andrew, who's the agent for the project, got back to us and said they're not able to finish that parking area and the asphalt, and would like to see an amendment to the development agreement to extend that. As far as everything else, it's my understanding it's still on target. Andrew didn't bring that up, but maybe you can address that, Andrew. He is here. And then I did provide a draft development agreement amendment if we are inclined to approve extending the deadline for the parking area.
So my first question on your report on page 71, it says there was no mention of the other requirements of the agreement, such as the fence, bike racks, etc. So the assumption is those items are still on schedule for completion. Can we get a confirmation on that?
Well, actually, I got a warrant call today, piece of asphalt, and so it's nice to have professionals come out and actually, lay things out for us. So we actually are able to add additional parking stalls from what they're telling me based on their layout plan for new asphalt. So bike racks wouldn't need to be done, and they can get it paved in probably about the next 3 weeks. So I don't know if that's how that changes things. They are recommending that there's a center tree in I didn't provide anything with for you guys, but you should have in your file. There's this tree in the center of the parking lot, the rear portion of the
Yep.
site.
The circle,
They're highly recommending that we take that out because the roots right now are really digging into the existing asphalt. So I really suggest that we take that tree out there and then they'll repave the entire lot. So extend it to the north, which is by Ironwood Yoga, which we're gonna do. Then we'll have that whole entire back area repaved, adding additional, we would be able to then add additional spots, still have a clear turnaround. And then we'll have that area wide to 22 feet, so we can have pass through traffic. On the
but
north side.
we still need that drawing.
You will need that, yeah, that's fine. I can run the drawing too. Right now, it's just basically to get an extension. But we should be able to have it paved fairly quickly. Does that mean that I have to come back to a plan commission meeting?
Normally not. So no, so the way the development agreement was written was you had to come up with a parking plan and it just had to be reviewed by Denise. Isn't that what it's,
Yes,
yeah,
it
it just
does.
had to be,
Yes.
it just had to be reviewed by Denise and I, and then you could proceed with it. So if they're inclined, they'd probably do the same thing. It's up to them.
Yeah.
But back to their original question, Andrew. So they were asking, everything else has been done or is being done, such as the fence on the back?
Plumber, but our plumber is, taking a very long time to get things done. So we're right there, we've got rough approval, rough inspections been done. We're literally just waiting for one to be completed and close up the rest inside.
So did you have that final inspection, that took place the week of 5/19?
For final, no, we missed it, we couldn't do that,
Okay,
yeah. It's been delayed after delay, right?
Was the fence finished in the back, Andrew? Okay, so there's a lot more that they need an extension
Yeah.
on besides the
We've got
parking.
neighbors that have really been concerned about that,
Yeah, I know.
and, you know, who the neighbors are.
Yeah, we did just take down the tree though, so shouldn't be happy about that.
I think they're more concerned about the fence and not having, well, the tree too, I suppose, because that was an issue when Julie's lived there. Yes,
the tree was?
yeah.
Oh.
There was a tree on that property that looked like it was on its way out.
Oh, that it could fall onto the other
Yes.
property at any time.
Yes, and the other owner didn't deal with.
Okay,
So without being new to this, I don't have to say that this is the property over to the west of the pit.
The old Julie's.
Julie's, yeah, okay.
Events should be like within a month. I mean, we're working hard at it right now, so events should be up within a month. Our plan realistically would be, we're on target to open, I would say, if everything falls in line, we, have secret approvals, but we could tighten.
So let me just go through real quick. So Andrew had only requested an extension of the parking, but it sounds like he's gonna need an extension on other things, so we may as well do it right. Or he's gonna have issues later, but so he was supposed to, so he has to agree to the site plan, drainage plan, landscaping, parking, etc. He was to install a 6-foot high solid fence, the width of the lot along the west property line. He needs a permit for that. That was supposed to be done by May 31st. He's saying he won't make it. 2 4 bicycle racks are to be installed per the plans. And again, that'd be by May 31st. Construction dumpsters, during renovation, what does it say? During renovation, he just had to make sure they weren't overflowed and didn't blow anywhere. He doesn't need an extension on that. Hours of operation, we set, there shall be no music. There shall be no outdoor seating. Then we go into the gravel parking lot. So it sounds like he needs an extension on the parking area, the fence, and the bike racks. And the landscaping, yeah.
Which we plan apply to the parking bike racks for their
We still want them, right, Nate?
Unless we review it entirely, yeah.
I mean, the whole reason was because we were gonna be undersized for parking, have enough stalls. So this is an alternate. Right?
Sure, I mean, I remember why, I mean, like, the challenges, it was written in the development agreement on there, so we. I mean, I guess, would you consider that change in parking?
Well, I would be concerned, so if you're taking out the tree that was in where you could drive around the tree,
That's a truck.
right? Does that area that was grass that held the tree, are you paving, is that now just a sea of asphalt?
Just that one tree.
I mean, are we anywhere near NR 151?
Well, most of it, no, I don't think so, because the building was already there. He's going over, most of it is going over existing
Existing,
gravel or
okay.
blacktop. The only concern, of course, we'd want to see his new parking plan to make sure it meets code, that's all, because fortunately, Andrew, we require
Yeah.
landscaping islands and all that other stuff, which might mess up that plan, but, yeah, I think, yeah, the bike racks were because he did not have
Yeah.
enough parking.
But I think we still want them,
I mean, I would. still
whether or
like to
not
put it-
there's enough parking or not.
Reducing it to one rack, make it
I mean,
just somewhere.
I think that it's important that we ask that, but at the same point, we put it on there for the code requirement. I guess I'd ask you to still do it, but I don't know that we want to compel them to do it.
But we
If-
can't
If we amend the development agreement to extend the deadline, when we're doing that, we could also address the bike rack in the amendment. We could say, no, he doesn't need the bike rack, or just one of the bike racks, or whatever you decide.
I'd still really like to see one bike rack. We should-
I got you.
Okay?
You're gonna pick up your pizza on a bike.
Maybe will.
You go ask Miles, he's got
I'm just.
he's got a car, no bike that'll do it. Sounds easy.
So reduce the bike rack to one bike rack? I'll have to go back, Andrew, and look at what was required, and then we'll compare that to that new plan that you submit us.
And how many parking spots did we require originally?
I'd have to,
16. Now your guy says more.
We were 9 on the side, and so as it stands today, we do get 5 in front, well. Probably not, but we had it at 4 and 9.
And now you're,
We have full, probably get at least 20.
okay.
Skip the horses.
I'd have to look back in the file and see how many were required, because the development agreement, we had reviewed a plan, so we knew the number was okay, so then the development agreement just says it's per the plan. So I'd have to go back through the file and see, okay, well, what was the requirement?
So the guy, because he's taking the tree out, he's telling you you can get more spots in it. But is that gonna make it feasible to
Still.
get out of there? Okay.
And that plan to make sure that does work has to be reviewed by Denise and I before it can be implemented.
So then all the stuff on. Who's Joseph Kurth?
IC's local partners,
You have multiple partners?
just my wife and I.
So the second paragraph of your letter where it talks about, partnered with Martha Coventry, none of that applies anymore, Julie?
Well, so
Because the public won't know that. I have no copy of a contract that says Martha's okay with this.
There's at least.
We don't have it.
I can say, so if we do, the whole idea was to move that island and create essentially a larger parking surface so that I would if we weren't able to do the entire parking lot right now, like as we're planning to do it, I would need additional spaces. And she and I signed a lease agreement, binding lease agreement for, it's a rolling contract for a year to, lease 20 stalls from her.
Were you envisioning that as employee parking mostly, or? 'Cause
That's,
that's
so.
not very
it's still in
functional for-
place. Yeah, it's still in place, so what we essentially could do is, use that as employee parking. Those 16 stalls derived from 4 in the front and, it was 4 back.
How do they get from her lot to your property?
You would simply, they could, right, there's an agreement that they can use a pass right.
For us, for us.
So
15.
So the code requires the parking to be on the same lot as the use. And that's why last time when we had talked about it, we said no. Now, if it's a temporary thing, like, hey, for 30 days until we get it asphalted or something, we tend to work with people as a temporary use. But it sounds like that may not even be necessary because he's not ready to open. And it sounds like Beeson, you said, is going to be there in 3 weeks, so. Right, so he needs an amendment for the landscaping condition, the parking condition, the fence condition, revise the bike rack condition. I personally, he's saying it's 3 weeks, I would give him more time in case something happens,
I
in
would
case
give
they
him-
run into rain.
I think 90 days
But is
sounds
that,
reasonable.
And then what
Being
happens?
finished as far as when does he open?
Well, he would need a certificate of compliance from the village before he could open.
Okay, that covers parking, fences, everything.
Yeah, the
Everything
certificates,
that's in the development agreement.
right,
He would get an occupancy permit from the building inspector, but you have to have that and also the certificate of compliance for the villages at.
Question, just because it's so new, so plain to me, if I kept that lease agreement in place, can I use her lot, striped it and everything, can I use that as a full parking or as employee parking?
the code says no, but I know sometimes the plan commission makes,
Well, not on a permanent basis, no.
yeah. Temporary,
Temporary, yeah, but
It's never used. She wants that. She never used.
it sounds like it might not be an issue if you're gonna pick up that much parking, Andrew.
It shouldn't be.
is this,
I would find it difficult to think people are gonna park at a business next door thinking that it's part of it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, probably going too many ways, just because that's what attention tend to do. They're gonna see a whole lot, they're gonna just park where they can. But yes, yes.
I don't want to get into a situation like we have with time and 12-11.
Well, it's an empty, like, it's an empty lot, she rolls it up there. She comes once, then she has family come like right now, and then otherwise it's a vacant parking lot.
Is it residential?
It's the old.
What do you mean she has family?
Well, she just brings her own family, then they just play like. So. It's the old clinic.
She just lived there.
Oh,
The
I
old,
thought it was
the
a
old-
gallery of some sort.
the old clinic.
yeah, I think it was way back then.
It was an old church at one time.
It was a church
Yeah.
and it was a gallery once.
And she always has a sign that says open, but I don't know what she's opening for.
Right.
It's like
Yeah,
used artwork. And there's never, there's no.
Carla should send Martha a letter to remove her sign. Then if her open sign.
But you said she's still in business.
One left, yeah.
She is, yeah.
Yeah, when the car's there, she's there.
Oh,
And that's what you'll see in the lot.
but what is her business?
She sells used art,
Okay,
and she gives the money to like charity or something.
okay,
Yeah, she's open when the sign is open.
okay.
Right.
I think that we probably should, if there's an agreement. Not just this one case, but in general. Allow for adjacent parking if there's a path there. And I agree what you're saying. Nobody's gonna think to, not a lot of people are gonna think to walk through that.
Well, here's my
Buffer.
concern. There's a lot of like scruffy stuff along there between your building and her building. Is there a path wide enough? Could you put like mulch down to make it look like it's a walking path?
So we were gonna put, so from the back and rear of the building to where the tree line starts, probably easily 30. And so we're gonna put just a little gravel pathway connecting the two lots together. Yeah, which I would obviously maintain.
Yeah, we had a lot of challenges on that one.
I'm just asking questions. I'm not doing any decisions.
So you're.
No,
you're
we-
not-
Wait,
We're not actually looking at having the parking really count towards the parking requirements. This is just something that.
Well, it sounds like you'd already gotten past the parking requirements.
my thought
In
is if he
previous
had
agreement.
staff that wanted to park over there.
That's the.
To me, that, when I looked at that, might make sense, but it looks like an abandoned building, so.
I don't know that we wanna get in the middle of that, if that, I mean, it's one thing if we're taking that parking and saying this is part of the requirement. But really what we're talking about is saying, no, if you're gonna go to that business, you have to park in that business's parking lot. And I think that's,
Right, I just don't think we address it at all.
yeah, we don't,
Yeah,
there's no reason for us to touch it.
Right. I
Yeah,
don't
if
want-
he has,
No,
the way the code is written, if he has the parking that is required on site, that's all we care about. And if somebody parks down the street or on a neighbor's and comes in, yeah, I mean, we can't even control that. So. Okay, so,
so what, a 90-day extension?
yep, so I have 90-day extension on the landscaping, parking, fence. Can reduce the bike rack to 1.
Yep.
And can't open until he receives the certificate of compliance, which means compliance with the development agreement.
So that means getting the parking drawing within the next 10
ASAP.
days to Julie and I.
who does the final inspection that says he can open? Or certificate,
I do.
okay.
I do. So it's with the development agreement, we have to inspect it to make sure everything's been met, and then we can issue the certificate of compliance. So,
Somebody care to make that motion?
So,
Motion by Heidler,
second,
second by her. Further discussion? All those in favor respond with an eye.
Hi.
Opposed? Carried.
Take care of everyone.
thank you. Red will be cat.
Okay, 6G, development agreement amendment, permit extension, stormwater pipe delay, 2399 Maple Drive, Luna View. Oh, Mr. Goki.
so, he's doing really good with his project, the Luna View. The biggest issue they ran into is they're not gonna be able to complete the driveway and the storm drainage system, because one of the pipes that goes under the driveway or under the road,
Yeah, there's 3 5-foot, 150-foot pipes that go.
and they are on back order because they have a tank associated with them. Everything else is on track. He just needs an extension literally on that part of his project, which would be the stormwater pipe in the driveway.
So is a 90-day, would that be
Yeah.
amenable to you?
Yeah, so the company that does it, they're called Contact, Teros and everything else that got it done, but. That was supposed to come in 2 weeks ago and that's what they till July.
So can you live 90 days agreeable to you?
That'd be awesome.
Okay. Same thing, certificate of compliance before occupancy, just as what we did with Andrew.
And that's all spelled out in his development agreement. Because Al's development agreement is older, he's under that old template. I'll just double check to make sure that's in there, and if not, we'll put it in the amendment. And then this amendment will go to the board.
Is there a motion? Motion by Kane,
Second.
second by Harf, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried.
Thank you so much.
All that time for a 3-minute conversation now.
Thank you.
Okay, matters to be placed on a future agenda referred to a committee official or employee.
As discussed throughout the meeting.
Okay.
I was just gonna say, at everything that we discussed, I mean, if it, you know, if it has a development agreement or an amendment, it's going to the board. I do not have a list in front of me, but it's as we discussed, really.
For the June meeting, I'd like to ask that we, as a plan commission, revisit the Hoffman Development Agreement. It appears that there was an overall height that was lacking, structure that was omitted. And I believe that we were working on the premise that previous commission had approved it, but we don't have any of that information. I'm very concerned with the overall height of the project. And since
I did read your email from a while ago. I may not have responded, but I read
Oh,
it.
I wasn't looking for a response.
Oh,
I was
okay.
just-
Well, phew, that's good.
No. The
Hoffman's?
Hoffman Agreement, the Shelley Lane. I mean, I raised some questions. My understanding was that we were operating under what had been approved before. Codes have changed. It's a new development agreement. And I just think we should do our due diligence and revisit it with all the information. All we have is a height to E. We do not have an overall building height. And that was at 34 feet.
Couple problems with that, Skip. So by Robert's Rules of Order, we have to reconsider it at the same or subsequent meeting. So we would have had to put it on the agenda to discuss today, okay? That doesn't mean the board can do something when it gets to the board level, but the plan commission, we would have had to do that at that meeting or this
But it
meeting.
hasn't been acted on yet because we had a 90-day.
No, we did.
I mean, we acted.
Yeah, we acted on it. So for us, we made a motion, a second, and we sent it to the board. So so that would have had to have been done at that meeting or this one. Now, I will say this though, the way we laid it out was if the timeline did not work for him, he is supposed to come back to the plan commission. When he does that, that opens that window up again. If that does not happen, that could happen at the board level. The board could say, hold on, wait a minute, you know, we know this is the same plan that was approved before, but we want to revisit this.
Okay.
So that could happen at the board level.
Forgive me, I'm still learning.
No, that's, yeah,
But I just-
of course.
Is there some way you can flag that file, so eventually it's gonna come like in front of the plan or the board again?
Well, it comes before the board.
Goes to the board in July.
So the board should have a packet. Thank you. Can you sit down with Julie and,
Go ahead.
I was just say, sit down with Julie and lay out the concerns on there so that we can get that put into the packet for the July board meeting.
Well, I was gonna ask you to, as a plan commission member, write a letter to the board
Okay.
voicing your concerns, please.
And I wanted to go back. We don't have minutes from 21 and 22 on the digital file, so I've got to go into the office to find out what the discussions were. Because the plan commission
don't?
had concern, they're not digital now. Boy, I tried to look.
We have them, they're just no longer on the website.
Right, that's what.
Yeah.
Oh, because I was gonna
I
say,
have to go into
they
the
should be
office to-
digital. Okay.
But it might be a good idea to have a conversation with Julie, because she could.
Yes.
Walk you through what it is. Before you send it out.
But that would be helpful for the entire board.
Then I have nothing else to add.
Okay. Next meeting, June 24th. Anything else? Okay, is there a motion to adjourn at 7:54?
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Harf,
Second.
second by Shampo, all in favor? Aye. Carried. Thank you, everyone. That's smoother, quicker than what I thought.
For sure.
Yeah, you know. You guys, let me figure this out here.